let's see. I'm not going to use slides. It's just going to be me. I'm a little bit of a narcissist, so that's why. I've been thinking about community for a long time. I used to live abroad. I used to live in Taiwan, and when I came back to the United States, I had this idea that there was going to be community in the suburb that I moved to, and that all the neighbors were going to know each other and be helping each other out with projects, and the kids were going to be all in a gang, going from house to house, kind of like little rascals or something like that. And it just wasn't like that. Every house was like its own fortress, and people hardly interacted at all. One neighbor I would see only emerging from his garage, the automatic door would open and he'd drive out, and then 5 o'clock he'd drive back in, and that was all I'd ever saw of him. And I felt really lonely, and I wondered what happened and why there was this big playground in the middle of the neighborhood that was empty of children all the time. And I tried to create community as best I could and have neighbors over for potlucks, and things like that. And sometimes they would, we'd get together to watch the Super Bowl or something like that. But that didn't give me the feeling of community, because I realized that I could look around at every single one of my neighbors and say, I don't need you. Because every need that I have in my life, I meet with money. I don't need this person to help me with take care of my children. I don't need this person. I don't rely on this person in any way. And that's not only true of our neighbors in an industrialized society like ours. It's true in general. Even the person, normally speaking, the person who made this shirt, I don't need that person. That person was probably, unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to say it here, but that person was probably a sweatshop worker in Indonesia, I don't need the person who grew the food that I ate for lunch. Why don't I need that person? Because somebody else could do the same thing. Because I could pay somebody else to do the same thing, because I'm living in a commodity world. So how can you have community when you look around and every person knows, I really don't need you and you really don't need me? Community is the opposite. Community is you look around and you need each other because you rely on each other's gifts that can't necessarily come from anywhere else. You can see already how Etsy is the beginning of a move back toward a world where we need each other, because when you buy something from an Etsy seller, it's not replaceable. You couldn't get it from anywhere else. And if you have a unique connection to that thing, to the thing that artist makes, that's unique. It's not a commodity. Or maybe it is in part a commodity. It's still a shirt, which you can measure and define according to objective criteria. But there's something else about that shirt that makes it unique, and that's why you're paying money for it. That's why you're seeking it out. It's not because it's a shirt. It's because there's an extra thing. Our culture is wealthy like no other culture has ever been in terms of the things that can be measured, in terms of the commodity, in terms of the number of shirts that you can get per unit of labor. But we are poorer than any society that has ever lived in terms of those things that cannot be measured. And this is a move back toward a world where the unquantifiable becomes more important again. If I organize people, we plant a community garden, and we grow our own food and share that food, and we no longer go to the supermarket to buy that food, that's a little bit less GDP. When we have reskilling workshops and we teach each other how to cook again, then we're not paying for the service of food preparation and the markup that goes into supermarket deli food or restaurant food. So again, that's a little less GDP. When you have a tool library in your neighborhood, or zip cars or buzz cars or something like that, and you're no longer needing to purchase as many automobiles. So again, a little bit less GDP. Why is that a problem for an economist? Really, it's because our financial system only works in a context of economic growth. And I'm not going to go into really why that is, maybe a tiny bit. I mean, it's basically goes all the way down to the way that money is created and circulates as interest-bearing debt. in our society. The fact that there's always more debt than there is money because of interest puts us into constant competition with each other for never enough money. Does that resonate with your experience at all? Constant competition for never enough money, and impels the endless quest to find something to turn into money, to find something to monetize, to find some piece of nature to convert into a product, or to find some social relationship to convert into a service. The problem today is that there isn't very much left that we can convert into more products. We can't keep increasing the amount of fossil fuels that we burn, or the amount of fish that we catch, or the amount of forests that we cut down. We're running out of room. And as my experience in suburbia illustrates, we're also running out of room in the social realm. We're running out of community and relationships that can be replaced with services. One, that's why our financial system is in a crisis that will not go away. Secondly, this compulsion to grow and grow and grow is why that there's no community. Ultimately, it's because, why don't I need you? Why don't I need my neighbor? Why don't I need this specific person? It's because that relationship of mutual dependency and mutual aid, of looking after each other's children, of getting together and singing songs together, creating music together. Every small town used to have its own marching band. Entertainment was a collaborative function. But that was taken away and now sold back as digital products, right? And so the fact that we experience almost no community means that there's not a lot left that can be converted into services that we pay for. And that's the essence of the economic crisis. It's a crisis in the end of growth, and that's why it won't go away. And our politicians, when they're trying to solve that crisis, they say, well, we just have to stimulate demand. We have to increase demand. What does that mean? That means more goods and services being exchanged for money. So all of your collaborative consumption stuff, that's actually decreasing demand. And in a subtle way, what Etsy's doing by eliminating middlemen and returning the social commons of this market to the people. I mean, yeah, Etsy's making some money, and it's a growing company, but the amount of retail business and other business that it's destroying as it does this, in the same way that Wikipedia, for every dollar Wikipedia makes, which is almost nothing, right? It's destroyed enormous amounts of money from the old encyclopedias. This is one way that Etsy is part of the ending of an old regime and the beginning of a new one. We're inundated with enough and more than enough of the things that we can measure, but we're missing something else. We're missing the unquantifiable, the things that really make life rich. What we have in our supposedly wealthy society is a kind of fake wealth that doesn't really satisfy anybody. And then you go maybe to a third world country or something, and you spend some time with a family, and you see what community is like there. Even in the midst of material poverty, there's a richness to life. Or you go off into nature and experience connection to nature. And at that moment, that hunger to acquire is gone. You feel a kind of wealth. And there's no desire to fill a void by shopping and by acquiring. Sometimes I just drive through suburbia, I drive where I live, and I just look at these long streets with the strip malls and the big box stores and the fast food franchises, and all of the buildings are the same, basically. They're these squares and the only windows usually are just like right where the door is, if you look at a typical Walmart or something. It's utterly utilitarian. It's extremely efficient in terms of the amount of floor space per dollar or per unit of labor. It's extremely efficient. And all of this that I'm talking about, this entire conversion of social capital into paid services, this is all in the interests of efficiency. People don't take care of their own kids anymore. They send them into daycare, and that's more efficient because one person can take care of 10 kids at the same time. It's more efficient to have one super band sing all the songs and distribute them to everybody else and not have people get together and sing anymore. But really, the efficiency is just maximizing the thing that can be measured, and that's not what we need right now. We already have enough of that on this planet. Even though 1 in 7 children in this country goes to bed hungry, it's not because we don't have enough calories. 50% of all food is wasted in this country. It's because there's not enough money, which is ironic because money is something that would be like saying there's not enough inches to build enough houses. Money is essentially a measure. We've become more and more efficient at producing those things that we can measure. And so I drive through suburbia, and I'm like, can't we do better than this? Like, really? After 3,000 years, 5,000 years of architectural development, we're building these square boxes? Like, we were richer in that sense. We were richer 100 years ago, 200 years ago. So I see Etsy as part of a counter movement to re-enrich life. This is another way that what you're doing is bad for the economy. Because if the real hunger isn't for the measurable, isn't for the amount of stuff, isn't for the size of your home, if the real hunger is for beauty, for connection, for uniqueness, for relationship, if that's what the real hunger is, then to the extent that you provide that and meet the real hunger and provide that richness in somebody's life, then they're not going to have that desire to endlessly consume. And maybe you can sense that you're part of something more than just a change in a mode of distribution. It's a transition from a money economy to a gift economy. When I say that, I'm not saying that we're going to abolish money or eliminate money completely. We're saying that the role of money is shrinking. All the examples of collaborative consumption are an example of that. Another question to investigate, which I do in my book, but I won't do too much here, is how can we transform money itself to make it take on some of the properties of the gift? Every time that there is a transaction on Etsy, a gift is happening. It's not just a financial purchase. And I'll explain that from both directions. From the perspective of the buyer, if all I wanted was that shirt, I could get it cheaper somewhere else. But I'm willing to pay extra. And I'm willing to pay extra for something that cannot be measured. If you can't measure it, then there is no rational price for it. So I'm paying more for something I can't measure. That extra money I'm paying is a kind of a gift. For the seller, I think, and there's probably a lot of Etsy sellers here, and even if you're not an Etsy seller, many of you are in some other way an artist. You're not fundamentally doing it for the money. You didn't say, okay, what's the best way I can maximize my rational self-interest in this life? I know I'm going to, I'm going to knit things by hand, right? You want to create something beautiful, and you're giving it out there. That is also fundamentally a gift mentality. I mean, here's even a deeper level of the transition that we're going through right now. Gift economics corresponds to a different way of understanding ourselves and a different way of perceiving the world. In a money economy, we're all in competition with each other, and your well-being is separate from my well-being. In fact, if you get sick or under some disadvantage, that's actually good for me because that's one less competitor. But in a gift economy, it's the opposite. Ancient gift economies, and any community today that deserves the name of community, in other words, any community that people depend on each other, if anybody in that community suffers an illness, dies, suffers some misfortune, that's bad for me too. Because that's one person who cannot fully share her gifts. So the way we see the world in a gift economy kind of matches up with spiritual teachings that say, you are part of me. Your happiness is my happiness, and what I do to you, I do to myself. It doesn't conflict with the economic environment the way it does today in a money economy. So as we step more fully into our nature as gift-giving beings, we also begin to see the world in a different way and no longer see ourselves as these discrete, separate beings in a universe of other. This is going to be the new defining economic paradigm in the future. It's not just, the money system that's breaking down. It's all of our institutions that enforce separation, that tell us in one way or another, you are a separate individual in a universe of other. I mean, even biology is now changing its paradigms and discovering the importance of cooperation and symbiosis. Even physics, the self-other distinction is beginning to break down. And so we're stepping into a new understanding of who we are. And the answer to what's the purpose of life, which economics has said to maximize rational self-interest, and biology has said to maximize reproductive self-interest. Our understanding of that is really changing to an ecological understanding, which is my purpose, the purpose of human life, is to give of my gifts towards something bigger than myself, towards something that's meaningful to me. Ancient people understood this. Anyone in a gift economy understands this. Anyone who studies ecology understands that no species is there just to seek its own benefit, but that every species gives something necessary for the well-being of the whole. And you take away any species, and all species are worse off. Not better off, not one less competitor, better off, but all species are worse off. And we are the same. Humanity generally, but every single person in this room also has a gift, or many gifts. And if you are doing anything in your life, in any situation, whether it is a job or a relationship or anything else, where you're not giving of your gifts towards something meaningful, you're going to feel, I wasn't put here on earth to do this. Maybe some of you have been through a time like that in your lives. And then maybe, I don't want to make a fairy tale about it, but maybe then you found Etsy. And I think that that's really, I don't know, maybe on like a spiritual level, that's maybe the most important thing that's happening here, is it's giving people an opportunity to enact their gift. It didn't exist before in a centralized commodity economy. You had to suppress your gifts even, or devote them towards something you didn't care about, but no longer. Now you can listen to that feeling. I wasn't put here on earth to do that. I was put here to give something that only I can give, maybe just in my tiny little unique way. After all, life is a gift. I didn't earn being born. I didn't earn the water. I didn't earn the sun. I didn't earn any of this. I've received so richly, and I desire to give in turn. And now, Etsy is one of the new ways that we can act on that. The gift seeks the need, and the need seeks the gift. So you put it out there, and then that unique other person in the ecosystem that wants exactly that wants the broken laser pointer, or wants that thing that you make, and then you find that person, and because you're giving something to that person that's a little bit beyond the price, a relationship is born. Gifts create relationships. Money transactions do not. I paid you, you gave me the thing, we're done. But in an Etsy transaction, it often goes beyond that. The seller will send a little extra thing even, wrap it really nicely, and then you want to keep buying from that person. And there's another relationship that's happening, and that's another signature of the gift. So we're creating wealth here, wealth that can't quite be measured, will never show up on economic statistics, but it's the wealth that meets the real need for beauty and connection and the enactment of purpose. And my time is up, but it was a pleasure talking to you all. Thank you.